Have you ever thought about how difficult it is to hail a taxi? You might think it's pretty easy. Just step onto a busy street, hold your hand out and wait for a cab to pass by. Then hop in and ask the driver to take you to your destination. But that process can be so much more complicated in different parts of the world. Here in the United States, there are taxis, but many people don't trust them because they often have reputations for overcharging customers or simply refusing to pick them up if they're heading to a less than savory neighborhood. In other countries, taxis may be even harder to find. They might be too expensive or not readily available at all. And public transportation could be limited or downright dangerous. In the early 2000s, some college students found themselves in this very situation. They were trying to get home from a night out in San Francisco, but none of them had any luck with taxis, so they decided to turn to their personal networks. They texted friends and family members asking for rides home. Some of them got lucky and were picked up, but others weren't so fortunate. It was then that the students realized there was a huge demand for a convenient, reliable, and affordable ride-sharing service. And that realization sparked the beginning of Uber. In today's video, we'll explore how Uber began and what the company did to disrupt the transport industry. How Uber began. The story of Uber goes back to two men named Travis, Kalanick and Garrett Camp. Both were entrepreneurs with big dreams who would soon join forces to change the way the world gets around. Travis was born in 1976 in Chicago, Illinois. His parents were academics, and they moved to the Silicon Valley when he was just a child. He grew up surrounded by the innovators and tech wizards of the day, and it wasn't long before he became fascinated with computers himself. When he turned 12, his parents gave him a computer, and he spent the next 2 years teaching himself how to code. As soon as he graduated high school, he enrolled in the University of California, Los Angeles, where he studied computer science, but he dropped out after 2 years to start his first company called Red Swoosh was a peer-to-peer file sharing service that allowed users to upload and download files via a network of other people's computers. But despite its innovative approach to data transfer, the company never really took off. Although Red Swoosh did manage to raise $3 million in venture capital funding, it was forced to shut down in 2006 when its main service provider terminated its contract. But instead of letting a setback defeat him, Travis used the experience to learn how to better manage a startup, and he quickly set his sights on launching a new business. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, another young man named Garrett Camp was doing the same thing. Like Travis, Garrett was also a computer programmer. He had attended the University of Michigan, where he earned a bachelor's degree in political science and business. He didn't actually end up using his degree because Garrett had launched his first company while still in school. After graduation, he helped grow the company, and it eventually went public in 2004. But by 2006, Garrett was ready for a change. He wanted to start his own thing, something that could truly reflect his vision. Garrett's first attempt was a social networking site called Expost, but it ended up failing due to technical limitations. Although the site was fairly popular, it couldn't handle more than 200 users at a time without crashing. So Garrett abandoned the project and tried again with a simple photo sharing app. This one was much more successful, and the app became the go-to destination for people looking to meet new friends. But Garrett had no intention of building an empire based on a photo-sharing app. He felt like he was capable of more. So he sold the app to a larger company and shifted his focus to a new venture. It was during this time that Garrett came across an article discussing the prevalence of taxicab corruption in developing countries. While reading through the piece, an idea started to form in his mind. Could technology help solve this problem? He wondered if it was possible to build an app that could connect passengers with drivers and cut out the middlemen. At first, he wasn't sure if the idea was even worth pursuing. But then he remembered how he and his friends struggled to get home from the clubs in San Francisco. What if there was a convenient solution waiting out there somewhere? Garrett just needed to find it. Bringing the pieces together, Garrett reached out to Travis Kalanick, and the two started bouncing ideas off of each other. They agreed there was definitely a need for a ride-hailing service, but they knew the taxi industry was heavily regulated, so they had to get creative. Instead of trying to work within the existing system, they decided to circumvent it altogether. They would create a service that allowed anyone with a car to drive passengers. All they needed was an app to connect riders and drivers and set their prices. The next question was, how would they make money? After all, if they were going to undercut the taxi industry, they needed to keep their prices low. To figure out their pricing strategy, they looked to the music industry for inspiration. Music had changed drastically over the previous decade. With the advent of iTunes, consumers could now purchase individual songs rather than whole albums. This shift in purchasing power made music more accessible and affordable. It also made record labels less relevant and record sales plummeted. But this change ultimately benefited music lovers all over the world. That's because there was now a constant stream of new music being produced. Musicians no longer had to worry about selling records, so they experimented with bolder sounds and styles. The result was a surge in creativity that wouldn't have been possible under the old model. Travis and Garrett realized that a similar transformation could be made in the taxi industry. Their idea was to use surge pricing, which meant raising prices when demand for rides increased. If it started raining, for instance, the price of a ride would increase because demand would go up. In theory, this would incentivize drivers to hit the road, bringing the price back down to normal levels. At first, this might sound like an unethical move, but it was actually seen as a benefit for both passengers and drivers. For passengers, surge pricing ensured that they would always be able to book a ride. For drivers, it provided higher earnings potential. Now that they had a plan in place, it was time to develop the app. Garrett recruited his friend Oscar Salazar to do the coding. Meanwhile, Travis got to work on marketing. The first phase of the product was completed in March 2009, and the team tested it out on friends and family, but they knew that real success would require expanding their reach. So they began attending industry events, talking to potential investors, and recruiting new team members. Early challenges. By 2010, Uber was attracting hundreds of thousands of users per month, but the company had yet to become profitable. That's because its expenses were growing faster than its revenue. One of the biggest problems was that they had to pay drivers up front so that they could offer lower prices to passengers. But this practice created cash flow issues. There was also the problem of driver safety. Uber had no way of knowing whether its drivers were trustworthy or if their cars were roadworthy. But perhaps the greatest challenge of all was getting people to trust the service. Many people didn't understand why they should book an Uber when they could just hail a taxi. However, as time went on, Uber began making improvements. They focused on providing a seamless user experience, and drivers appreciated the freedom and flexibility the job offered. As more and more people downloaded the app, the company slowly began turning a profit, going global. By 2012, Uber had expanded to major cities all over the U.S., and they were just getting started. Over the next several years, the company went global, popping up in dozens of countries on every continent except Antarctica. They even partnered with local taxi services in some places to make their vehicles available through the Uber app. But this proved to be somewhat problematic because Uber was known for its affordability. Taxis, on the other hand, were notoriously expensive, so Uber customers were often surprised by the high prices they saw when booking a ride. In response to the confusion, Uber decided to separate its luxury taxi services from its regular ones and rebranded them as Uber Black. This way, passengers could choose between an affordable ride in a regular car or a more luxurious experience in a black car. But Uber didn't stop there. They continued to expand their services and rolled out options for groups of different sizes. UberX was designed to carry passengers and their luggage, while UberSub was for larger groups. They even launched a carpooling service called Uber Shuttle, which allowed commuters heading in the same direction to save money by sharing a ride. Throughout its growth, Uber has faced many obstacles, including government crackdowns and fierce competition, but none of these challenges have managed to slow the company down. Today, Uber is one of the most valuable private companies in the world. They have millions of drivers and billions of users, and it all started with one simple idea. What do you think of Uber? Do you prefer using it or sticking with taxis? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.